That weekend, I brought Joe and his little sister Lucy, who's 4, out to my office where I have my Oculus set up, and we launched the Apollo 11 VR experience. And what they got to see was they got to see the scale of the Apollo 11 rockets, and they got to see how different things broke apart. And what was incredible was to see the way that they engaged with the program. Like, my son Joe at one point was literally on the ground touching the moon. I asked him what he was doing. He said, "I'm trying to eat the cheese. Isn't the moon made of cheese?" My daughter, when we finished up, I said, what did you think? What did you think of Neil Armstrong? Did you see Neil Armstrong? She said, "I like the other guy." I said, "That's Buzz Aldrin." And she said, "Well, I like Buzz Aldrin because he waved at me." So all week, my 2 kids have been telling everybody that they met that they've been to the moon. And if you imagine the experience that they had there in that 15 or 20 minutes compared to what they may get in school, it's just completely poles apart. So it is an absolute pleasure of mine to welcome to the stage Dave Whelan, founder of Immersive VR Education.
There's a star of man waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. And there's a star.
Okay, thanks very much for those kind words on Apollo 11. So, my name is David Whelan. I'm CEO of Immersive VR Education. I also play Buzz Aldrin. That's a picture of me inside the VR experience. I got photo scanned, so I went into a studio with 360 cameras all around me, and they took one snap, photographed me from every direction, and we put it inside the game. We're very well known for the Apollo 11 experience, but what a lot of people don't know about us is what we're actually building. It's a virtual reality education platform called Engage, where any educator can teach any subject to anybody else in the world in a virtual reality environment. And what we're trying to achieve is, why even teach class in a classroom? So if you're teaching marine biology, why not teach that on the seabed and have a whale swim through the centre of the class? So it's a lot more engaging. So you've heard quite a lot about virtual reality and augmented reality today, so I'm not going to spend too long on this slide, but there are quite a lot of companies investing huge amounts of money in this technology. We're just on the edge of this technology really taking off. As you heard from Robert earlier, he expects when Apple bring out their new device that it'll sell 150 mobile phones, and you'd have to expect that at least 30% of those people will buy the VR headset that goes with that device. So, as you've heard, we are well known for the Apollo 11 experience, and what Apollo 11 is, it's a fully immersive virtual experience where you see the events through the eyes of those who live through it. So you play the role of Neil Armstrong. You get inside the rocket, you get to go to space. When you're inside the experience, we've been hugely accurate. So this is a virtual reality documentary where in standard documentaries, the director will point you in the direction that he wants you to look, and he will narrate what's happening. What we do is a little bit different, where we place you in the experience and you make up your own mind about the events. So what I'd like to do is just show you a short trailer of the experience.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
So when you're inside the experience and you're sitting in a cockpit, you will hear the real cockpit audio from the event. So you really hear Neil, Buzz, and Michael talking. To heighten the immersion, we use quite a lot of music to dramatic effect. We see education as if you're not having an emotional impact on your subject, they're not going to retain that knowledge. So it's like when you watch movies. You only remember the movies that make you laugh or make you cry because it had an emotional resonance with you. You don't remember any of the other movies. We feel education is the very same way. If you're not having an emotional impact with your students, if they're not enjoying their subject on an emotional level, or if it's not filling them full of awe and wonder, they're not going to enjoy it, they're not going to retain it. This really is an experience just to inspire them to want to learn more about the Apollo program. And the reason we picked Apollo is we are an education company, and as a subject, we opened up history books, and nearly every story you read in a history book is all about death or famine or war. And the only universally taught history worldwide that's universally respected is the Apollo program. So it was the only one we could really go for as a first experience. And prior to Christmas, on the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive, Apollo 11 was on between 8 and 10% of all headsets available, which is a huge achievement for a small Irish company, especially considering only 3 of us actually built and developed Apollo 11. The company now is 17 people down in Waterford. Thank you. It only last Monday became available on the PlayStation in Europe, and it's going to be available in the rest of the world in the following weeks. So hopefully if you have a headset, go out and buy it. So as I explained earlier, we are building a platform called Engage. So why are we building Engage? The reason we're building Engage is there's huge issues with education at the moment. There's 2 types of people. There are the people who can afford education, good education, and there's everybody else in the world. So we don't realise how lucky we are living here in Ireland that we have a good education system, and for the most part it is free. Whereas in lots of countries, developed countries, to get a really good education, you're talking, especially a third level education, you're talking $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year just in fees to get an education. What's happening in the developed world is there's more and more demands for education places. So developing countries like China and India are exporting their best and brightest to countries like the United States and the UK. It's causing huge strain on the education systems there because places are so limited, and it's causing prices to absolutely skyrocket. We see VR as a real alternative for people who can't afford education. Engage is a distance learning platform where you as an educator, you can go onto the system and create your own content. We record all your data, so you have a virtual person inside Engage, and as you move in virtual space, we record all the points of your body. We also record your audio, and if you bring in 3D objects into the space, we also record where that happens. So as soon as you complete a class, you can sit down from the point of view of a student, replay that class over again, and if you're happy with your performance, you can publish it on the system. But also we have a system called Projected Presence, where educators, if they want to teach, say educators in the real world, they can maybe teach 50, 60, 100 people in a large room or provide a lecture. Inside Engage, what we can do is we can duplicate your avatar. So the educator can provide a live lesson in a small, intimate room, and they will just see one person sitting in front of them. But that one person could represent 1,000 people or 100,000 people, so everybody feels like they're getting one-to-one tuition. So I'm just going to show you a short little trailer for Engage.
Something that's a bit different. This is a new medium. It's not what we've been traditionally doing.
I think if we can turn learning into a hobby, I think people are going to really, really enjoy Engage.
It's going to be extremely disruptive and exciting times ahead. Immersive VR Education is dedicated to transforming the way educational content is delivered globally using virtual reality technology. We design educational experiences like the Apollo 11 experience, and then we also have our own education platform called Engage.
Essentially, Engage is a distance learning tool that we can use to basically put educators and students together in the same room with digital representations of themselves so that they can focus on sort of any topic that they want.
You can have your teacher, you can have your students with you, and you can go anywhere in the world or beyond and learn about really anything there is to learn by immersing yourself in that educational experience.
It is going to help so many people that have difficulties with the current educational modes that we use. It's a very exciting new platform and a new medium to explore, and that's what we're doing here. The first idea that pops into anyone's mind when they try the technology, they'd see it as an extension of the games industry. But actually, there's so much more potential for how it can be used.
There's a lot of educational experiences you can have which involve some type of game. And we're talking about immersing students who are used to playing games. Well, it is very much the same type of experience that you're coming out of it learning something as opposed to, you know, shooting people or something.
I mean, we're all becoming more and more educated as the years go on. There's just global academic inflation going on. But obviously we have a lot of challenges with that in the form that we can't necessarily create enough teachers to teach all the people who need teaching. What VR sort of allows us to do is bridge that gap and allow us to get bigger classrooms but with more intimate interactions between educators and students.
It's totally different to a dry historical lecture. You feel like you're there. You feel like you're in the experience.
You can transport your classroom to a different location or a different time and see some of these historical events as they happened.
It's a world of your own creation, which is great for educational environments. You're not just limited to a diagram of what it's like on the space station. You can explore the space station and see exactly how things are put together.
Do you feel a visceral kind of emotional reaction to what you're experiencing, which is fundamental to how we form memories?
Oh my God!
You learn a lot more doing a hobby than you do if you're like forced to sit down and read a book.
The students are engaged the whole time, and what they take from it is memory, and that's how you get your brain to remember these things. Let's learn it by living it.
Being able to use VR is a really vital technology of getting people involved, and it completely changes the way you learn things.
So that old guy who you've seen on the surface of Mars, he's an actual Apollo astronaut. He traveled to the moon back in the 70s. We also had the privilege of meeting Charlie Duke, the youngest man ever to walk on the moon. And we sat him inside our Apollo 11 experience. And as soon as he sat inside the cockpit, he really felt the presence of that moment, and he was transported back almost 50 years, and you could see him, and he was looking at all the exact dials that he was trained to look at during launch, and based on his feedback, we actually edited the experience to make it a lot more accurate. It's amazing what VR and AR technology can really do. It really can transport you to new worlds. So with the Engage platform, we're currently working with Oxford University, New Haven University, the Royal College of Surgeons, and the University of Bristol. And just recently, we've started talking to the University of Washington. With Oxford University, what we've developed inside Engage is we're seeing a lot of medical training applications people want to use Engage for. And Oxford University, they teach nurses in Africa with very limited instruments how to resuscitate a baby that's been born stillborn, because there's quite a lot of deaths in Africa during birth. So what we developed inside Engage is an application where there's a baby, a virtual reality baby that's born, you have to resuscitate. But the educators in Oxford are teaching the students in Africa virtually over the internet, and it's quite an amazing kind of experience, and we'll be releasing it free to the public in the next 3 or 4 weeks through the Engage platform. Also, we worked with the Royal College of Surgeons, and we created an app on the Gear VR, which is the Samsung VR headset. And it's how to complete a chest drain insertion, how to drain a chest after a road traffic accident. Previously, the students would have been taught exactly the procedure, how to do it, and then when they're being tested, they would have been given a multiple choice questionnaire, and they'd have to mark off A, B, or C. But in the application that we've created, unfortunately I don't have a trailer here for it, but there's a patient in front of them. I'm actually the patient lying on the bed, and then they have to choose life and death situations, so they have to choose the right diagnosis, they have to choose the right step, and if they choose incorrectly, the patient dies immediately. And we record all that data, so as they're inside the experience, we time how long it takes them to make a right answer. Not all answers are incorrect, And then at the end, then they're graded straight away, so they're getting instant feedback instead of going to the educator, waiting for the educator to mark their paper and then to give them feedback and then repeat it then until they pass. So, what's next? Okay. So what's next? As I said, we are very, very well known for the Apollo 11 experience, and the idea behind these showcase experiences is to get people excited about virtual reality in education. Because we know if I say to a student, hey, do you want to try our virtual reality classroom? They'll probably fall asleep. Whereas if I say to them, do you want to walk on the moon? They go, hell yeah, I want to walk on the moon. And at the end of the experience, they'll be redirected into the platform where we'll have lots of subsequent experiences all about the moon program and gravity and about the Earth in general. So what we're building next is, if I can get there, so Titanic VR. So obviously Ireland and Cork especially have a real affinity with the Titanic. And what we're building is a full recreation of the shipwreck where you get to dive on it in your own submarine. Then you get to send out an ROV, but inside virtual reality, you have full 360 view and you get to walk inside the shipwreck. As well as that, we're doing the above water scene where you will be getting into Lifeboat 6 and you'll witness the sinking of Titanic from the point of view of a survivor. And again, it's all highly emotive, and I'd just like to show you a short trailer.
See this huge thing with 4 funnels. I thought she was something out of the ordinary, my gosh. She was the last word in luxury. All her public rooms were absolutely amazing. All the woodwork was beautifully carved. She had everything that you could think of. She was a beautiful ship. We had no lifeboat drills, and the list of lifeboats, I believe, was put up in the galley about the day that we struck an iceberg. Nobody knew where their boats were. Lifeboats were things that they weren't necessary. You see, we were on a ship that was unsinkable.
So you can kind of tell from that trailer, we are going for highly emotive experience. And the great thing about virtual reality, it really can instill empathy in a person. You really feel like these people are real, these events are real. It's very hard to describe, but thankfully this room are very well educated, and everybody here is into VR and AR in a big way. So I'm kind of preaching to the converted, to be honest. Titanic VR, we had it as a Kickstarter campaign which closed off only last week, and it was successfully funded to the tune of €57,000 within 30 days. So what I would say to people here, if you are thinking of starting a business, like I'm from Waterford, okay, so quite often when I'm talking to people from America in this industry, the first thing they ask me is what part of Dublin is Waterford in? They don't realize, like, Waterford is its own little city. If I could start a business in Waterford 2 years ago and be this successful, you guys can do the very same. We started Apollo 11 on Kickstarter as well with a very, very basic demo, but we had the seed of an idea, and that was successfully funded. And from that successful Kickstarter just over 2 years ago, as I said, we now have a company of 17 people in Waterford, and we're expanding to 30 this year. So just because you're in Cork, you're in Ireland, it doesn't, like, especially in virtual reality, yes, there's a lot of cool work done overseas, but there's also a lot of cool work done here. Oculus just recently bought a company in Cork that make screens for headsets. There's a fund that will be talked about later on as well, that's all based around AR and VR, which Barry will be talking about at the next in the next conversation. So don't be put off, and they are great people in Ireland who can work in these projects for you as well. So finally, I'd like to finish up with, because we were a Kickstarter project, this is a guy that got our very early prototype Apollo 11 demo from the very first Kickstarter. And this is his reaction to what he feels virtual reality and augmented reality can bring to education, and he can speak a lot better than I ever could.
So, yeah, that was the end of the demo. I'm recording this end part because unfortunately my webcam stopped at the end there. But I'm just gonna pretty much say what I said there, and that this was absolutely amazing. Like, this was just incredible. It makes me so happy that my Rift right here can make me feel such powerful emotions from something that wasn't even real. Can you imagine, like, if you were back in high school and you were in your science class and you started talking about the Apollo missions, and instead of going through a long lecture about it, they gave you a VR headset and put you in this? How much more is that able to teach you than just someone sitting up there talking about it? Not that that's a bad thing, but this is just so much more powerful. I felt like I was in that space shuttle with Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins. That was... I'm not crying, but I certainly feel like I want to, because that's all I can say about it. It was just amazing. And these guys did a fantastic job on it. You know, I'm definitely gonna be backing them a lot now, because this needs to happen. This needs to become a thing. Virtual reality education, things like this need to become a thing.
So we had to cut him there because he actually talks for another 15 minutes. Thanks very much.